Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jessica Schauer. I'm the NWS Tropical Services Program Leader. And I want to thank you all for joining us for this webinar where we're going to discuss the 2017 NWS Tropical Product and Service changes. Just a few points before we get started. We will be taking questions. There's a question little tool on the right on your the GUI for GoToWebinar. The option there that says questions on the right side where you can type questions in. We will try to answer questions as the webinar is going on, and we will have time for questions afterwards. But during the slides, we would appreciate if we could hold questions until the end. There will be opportunity where you can type out your questions there, or at the end ask questions by raising your hand through the GUI there on the right as well. I have a number of folks who are helping me out with this. I'm actually located in Miami, Florida with the National Hurricane Center. There's some folks from the National Hurricane Center here with me, James Franklin, the Hurricane Specialist Branch Chief, and Hurricane Specialist Mike Brennan, and David Zielinski from the Technology and Science Branch there. There's a number of folks from the Office of Dissemination who are in charge of all the different ways that you receive our watches and warnings, as well as some of the folks who did the programming for the different watches and warnings and the graphics that you're going to see in this presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Okay. Okay, I'm having a problem getting started here. 1 second. There we go. Okay, so for our meeting agenda, we have a lot to cover today. There's a number of changes for 2017, but before we get started with that, I want to do a brief recap of some of the changes that happened in 2015 with the Tropical Product Suite from the Weather Forecast Offices, or WFOs. We'll go over that in a second. There's also a number of miscellaneous changes to NHC and CPHC products, NHC being the National Hurricane Center, CPHC being the Central Pacific Hurricane Center, that we'll talk about. The next big topic of conversation is the potential tropical cyclones. That we will have the option to issue watches and warnings for potential tropical cyclones in 2017, and we'll go over the details associated with that. There are experimental arrival of tropical storm force wind products that are going to be available from NHC in 2017. And there's going to be a number of changes to the NHC and CPHC forecast graphics suite, including the cone graphic that we will go over. The other big topic for 2017 is the introduction of storm surge watches and warnings for the Gulf and East Coast of the U.S., and also the approval of the codes for the storm surge watch and warning event codes from the FCC, as well as the extreme wind warning, which is only issued when we have Category 3 hurricane winds on land or higher. And then also we're going to go over the new format for the Atlantic National TCV products, and then we'll go over some resources and sample data. So this presentation you're going to see is this portion's being recorded, and it's going to be available for folks who could not attend. And we will also have a PDF version of it that you can go back to refer to. So I've included some acronyms in that. Because we are using this presentation as a resource, there are some places where we've provided links that you can go back to and look at later. There's also a lot of places where we're kind of repeating some of the information to make sure that we're driving home the message that we want you to know. We want everything, we don't want any kind of questions that arise during a tropical cyclone that you didn't know about certain things. We want to make sure that in this presentation that you have all the information that you need before we have a tropical cyclone landfall. There we go. Okay, so first we're going to go over the product suite from the weather forecast offices. And the first product we're going to talk about is the Tropical Cyclone Local Watch Warning product, or the TCV product, that's available for the Atlantic Basin offices in WFO Honolulu. So the Atlantic Basin offices have been issuing a TCV product since 2015, and Honolulu is going to be added in 2017. This is the product that contains the valid time event codes, so it's going to have your watches and warnings in there for tropical cyclone watches and warnings, and that's going to include tropical storm, hurricane, and storm surge watches and warnings in 2017. Storm surge, though, will not be there will not be storm surge watches and warnings from Honolulu. This product largely automated because it's created from grids that are generated by the forecasters. It includes all the local land-based tropical watches and warnings and detailed information in segments, and each one zone per segment. So if you're interested only in the forecast for, say, Metro Miami-Dade County, you can find that forecast, and it will have plain language information in it. It will also include information about the 4 major tropical cyclone hazards: wind, storm surge, flooding, rain, and tornadoes. So here is an example of that TCV product from the WFOs. Kind of highlight some of the important information. You can see this is one segment. It's for the Outer Banks for Hyde County, North Carolina, and you can see the headline there: hurricane warning in effect. All these items that are in red are items that have to be included in the TCV product. So you see the locations affected, and then you have the wind, storm surge, flooding, rain, and tornado sections, and then a more information section. Now, on the technical side, you can see the AWIPS ID for the product, TCV, and in this case, it's MHX, that's for the Morehead City office. The name of the cyclone, in this case, Irene, the advisory number, and then the ID number for the storm, in this case, AL09-2017, and then the VTEC. So the valid time event codes there are showing there's a hurricane warning, and that's an upgrade from a hurricane watch. So these the TCV product should go hand in hand with the graphics. The HTI, or hurricane threats and impacts graphics, are generated by all the coastal WFOs, and they give a relative threat level for the different hazards, for the wind, storm surge, flooding, rain, and tornado hazards. So you can see here on this map, you can see that there's South Florida. If you can go to the weather.gov/HTI page to get KMLs of these graphics, and you can click on those and get the impact statements that go with it for that geographical area. They're also available in Grid 2 format, but it's delayed from the National Digital Forecast Database, or the NDFD. That's available through the NDFD site. Those are only updated twice an hour. And these graphics are meant to help communicate the degree of preparation that's needed, and it also factors in a safety margin. So it's kind of a complicated algorithm that goes in to calculating something like wind, where you'll have things like whether there's a watch or warning in effect, the actual deterministic forecast for the wind, wind speed probabilities, so all go into that to come up with these graphics. Now, the next product from the WFOs I'd like to talk about is a hurricane local statement from the Atlantic WFOs in Honolulu. This product does not contain VTEC, and it is not segmented by zone. It's intended to discuss the overall messaging for the entire WFO county warning area, their whole area of responsibility. And new for 2017, though, even though it's intended for the entire WFO, WFOs do have the option now to select the universal geographic code for each zone that they want to include to have an alert for an HLS. So previously they had to alert every zone in their county warning area, but now they can change the UTCs or UGCs so that they only have the zones that they believe are going to have significant effects from the tropical cyclone. So, and also new for 2017, Honolulu is going to be issuing their HLS in this format instead of the format that is common for most of the Pacific offices. We'll go over in a second. So the forecast, or an example of an HLS from the Atlantic WFOs and WFO Honolulu, is on the screen. And we'll highlight some of the important information here. Everything in red is mandatory and will be included in the product. You can see that there's changes to the watches and warnings, and the current watches and warnings are listed, storm information. There's a situation overview that's kind of a free-form discussion of what's going on in that county warning area. You have the potential impacts, and if there is not a significant threat from one of these hazards, then it may not appear in the HLS. But the options are wind, surge, flooding, rain, and tornadoes. And I believe there could be some other information that's included there if needed. And coastal hazards can be included. And there's also precautionary preparedness actions there too that are included in every HLS, as well as when to expect the next update. And you can see the AWEPS ID there for HLS, MHX for Morehead City in this case, and the UGCs that are going to be affected by this HLS statement, alerted by the HLS statement. You can see the name of the storm, the advisory number, and the storm ID. So now, talking about the hurricane local statement, it looks like it's a different product for the Pacific offices, except for WFO Honolulu. Their product does contain VTEC, and it is segmented by zone for the HLS. There is no companion TCV product or HTI graphics for these WFOs, and they include San Diego, Oxnard, WFO Guam, and WSO American Samoa. So their product is different. This is an example of their product. And it has segmented portion. You can see there's actually two different zones that are included there. The Ulul is in the Chuk state. This is from Guam. And it does not have any watches and warnings in effect there, that first portion of the segment. And then the second portion here where you see the box points to the VTEC is for Guam and Guam coastal waters. They have a tropical storm watch in effect there. And you can see the ID for the system. So now we're going to go on to the things that are really new for 2017, now that we've gone over to the product changes that happened a few years ago, just to make sure everyone is aware of those. So one of the things that's new for 2017 is that we're proposing to retire a few of the guidance messages that NHC puts out, primarily because the models that are used to support them are being taken offline. And there is a public information statement out for this. The comment period ends today. And the most important thing you need to know here is that most of the guidance that for tropical cyclones is already available for track and intensity guidance at the FTP site, which is the link at the bottom of the screen there. So we are still collecting comments about this, but the guidance that's supplied in here is on the plans to be terminated in the next few months. So the place that you really should be going to for tropical cyclone track and intensity guidance is that FTP site. Now, something else that's somewhat new for NHC is using more social media and special messages that are posted to the NHC website and Twitter. They are done so simultaneously to kind of indicate when advisories are going to be initiated. So if you're looking for a heads up on when NHC is going to be starting a storm, this is a place to look for that information. Also, something that is new for 2017 is NHC is now going to have a public information statement at their disposal. So if they need to get a message out to users, maybe about delays or about updates that are not on the normal schedule, it is possible that they may use the public information statement for that. So that's PNS NHC is the AWEPS ID. Now, changes out of the Central Pacific Hurricane Center, they are going to be changing their tropical weather outlook product so that it matches the product that's produced by the National Hurricane Center. It is now going to be extended out to a 5-day forecast for formation chances. The formation chances will be provided in 10% increments, just like it is by NHC. They're going to do so for 48 hours and for the 5-day period. And CPHC will also add the graphical tropical weather outlook for 5 days as well, just like you see on the NHC webpage. So now we're getting more into the larger changes for 2017. And the first one we're going to talk about is potential tropical cyclones. So the NWS now has the option to issue watches and warnings for disturbances that are not yet a tropical cyclone, but pose a threat of bringing tropical cyclone conditions to land within the watch period, 48 hours. So essentially what this means is if we're expecting to see, there's a forecast for tropical storm force winds or greater associated with a system that has a good chance of becoming a tropical cyclone, or that but may just not have a center of circulation, may not be closed off yet, is that we would have the option to issue a tropical storm watch or warning as appropriate for that system on land. These systems are going to be identified in all the products as potential tropical cyclone. In this case, it would be potential tropical cyclone 1, 2, 3. They'd have a number just like a tropical depression would. And they would, each basin, so for the Atlantic basin, they would just go through that one cycle of numbers. So once there was a potential tropical cyclone 1, there would not be a tropical depression 1, it would be tropical depression 2 after that. So you'd go through them sequentially. And the standard suite of WFO and Tropical Cyclone Forecast Center products are going to be prepared for these potential tropical cyclones. So here's a truncated example of a public advisory from NHC. And you can see that the primary difference between it and any other public advisory is just in the header. The name of the storm says Potential Tropical Cyclone 1, Public Advisory Number 1. The storm, when it's referred to, it will be referred to as a potential tropical cyclone. You can see that you have a tropical storm warning issued for this. There's no change in the name of a warning. It's going to be a tropical. It'll be a tropical storm warning. There's no potential tropical cyclone warning. It's going to be issued for systems that are threatening land only. The advisory packages will be discontinued when the watches or warnings are no longer necessary for land. So this could result occasionally in gaps in the product issuance if there's not an immediate threat to land. So that's important to know. Like if we have a system that's going through the Caribbean, there may be watches and or warnings issued for it, maybe a 5-day forecast. And then if there's no immediate sense that it's going to require watches and warnings for land for several days, then that forecast will likely go away at that point until there is a sense that there's going to, either it becomes a tropical cyclone and closes off the center of circulation, or there is a need to issue a forecast for watches and warnings. So you can see the Service Change Notice 1728 for more information on potential tropical cyclones. So some of the changes for the NHC and CPHC products, there really aren't too many changes to the advisory packages. They'll still be the standard advisory package that you would get for any kind of issuance from NHC or CPHC. The genesis probabilities that are in the tropical weather outlook will also appear in the public advisory for these systems. So have a sense of what the chance is for it developing into a tropical cyclone. And the graphical TWO will not, on the 5-day, will no longer show that area of potential formation because there already will be a 5-day track forecast out. So it will look like the graphic on the right, where you'll see an X and then the name of the system. So in this case, it'd be potential tropical cyclone 9. And the changes to the graphical tropical weather outlook for 2017, for both, they're applicable to both NHC and CPHC. They're noted in PNS 1730. So I believe that's an SBN, Service Change Notice. Okay, so changes to the ATCF, or the Automated Tropical Cyclone Forecast Database for potential tropical cyclones. It's important to know that there will be no new storm types for potential tropical cyclones. They're going to use the storm types from existing storm types, most commonly the LO or low pressure system, the DB for disturbance, the EX for an extratropical system transitioning to extratropical, and a WV for wave. And the numbering for the system will be similar to what we do for depressions. If you have an INVEST system, it's going to give given an ID in the 90s, so it would be INVEST, say, AL93. And if it becomes a potential tropical cyclone, if we need to issue watches and warnings, then it will become AL02, or in this case, for an example, it would get a number, and those numbers would be the 1 through 49, just like they are for regular tropical cyclones. So another change for 2017, NHC is going to experimentally be providing arrival of tropical storm force wind graphics. And you can see there's two examples here on this page. This is NHC felt this was a very important item to get more visibility for, because it is a critical planning threshold when the tropical storm force winds are going to arrive. And preparations become more dangerous once the tropical storm force winds are present. So these graphics, they account for the forecast uncertainty from the same realizations that are used to create the wind speed probabilities. And there are options to display these graphics with the wind speed probabilities, and I'm going to show you those on the next page. So you have the option with or without wind speed probabilities. The primary graphic on the left there depicts the earliest reasonable time of arrival, and that's when there's no more than a 10% chance of onset. So it's going to be, say, for somewhere like, in this case, Brunswick, Georgia, it says Thursday at 8 p.m. that would be the earliest reasonable time to expect those tropical storm force winds, and you'd want to have your preparations completed at that point. There will also be a secondary graphic that will show the most likely arrival time, and that's on the right. And that's when you have an equal chance of winds arriving before or after that time. And these graphics are going to be available on hurricanes.gov with the tropical cyclone graphics specific to the storm. Okay, and there are also some proposed changes to the tropical cyclone graphics. This includes the cone graphic. Right now, there's a public information statement gathering comments about these changes, but NHC and CPHC do plan to update the look of their graphics. Here's an example on the right. As you can see, I think it seems to have a cleaner look and feel than the graphics that are currently put out. And the storm information, or the storm size information, will be able to be toggled on and off that cone graphic, and that is included. You can see right there the yellow that's on the graphic, or the orange color, is in this case would be the initial wind field for the tropical storm Isaac. You can see it's much bigger than that area in the cone, and there's concern that people will get confused about the area where the effects are going to be felt versus the center point of the storm. So this is a way to try to get that information more visibility. Probably the most important thing for our users to know is that the static URLs for the latest available graphics are going to change. And there's a complete list of the proposed URL changes on the NHC website using the link that you see there. Now, the CPHC products are provided on dynamic URLs, so those graphics will be available when there's a tropical cyclone at the CPHC website. So there are also some new KML formats for some of these products that will be available in 2017. The following products are going to have both KML and shapefiles available at the NHC's /GIS website. You can see the extent of the 34, 50, and 64 knot winds at the advisory time and the forecast extent. The estimated cumulative wind swaths of hurricane force and tropical storm force winds, as well as the 5-day probability of 34, 50, and 64 knot winds. And that is available on a 5-kilometer grid. And like I said before, the comments on this close on April 9th. So if we have not received any negative comments so far, And if we do not receive negative comments, then we plan on making these operational at the beginning of the hurricane season. So the next thing I'd like to talk about isn't new because it became operational in 2016, but this is the inundation graphic, also known as the potential storm surge flooding map from NHC. It is only generated for the U.S. Gulf and East Coast, and it is basically provides a quantitative risk assessment for decision makers. It shows the places that have a 10% chance of exceeding certain thresholds. And in this case, the blue being 1 feet, the yellow being 3 feet, the orange being 6 feet, and the red being 9 feet. So the idea is that these graphics show a reasonable worst case scenario. They are not the expected forecast. I think that's really important for people to understand, that this is a planning tool for people to prepare for that reasonable worst case scenario. The first maps are generally issued with the initial hurricane or storm surge watch or warning, or they could be issued at other times, including with tropical storm watches and warnings as appropriate. Now, their availability, they are available on the Hurricane Center website, NHC website, about 60 to 90 minutes following the advisory release. And there are geotests available for them, and map services also available from the NOAA National Ocean Service Now Coast webpage, but they're about 10 to 20 minutes delayed from what you get from the NHC webpage. So the next big thing for 2017 is the storm surge watch and warning. The Weather Service will issue storm surge watches and warnings as appropriate, and it become operational for the U.S. Gulf and East Coast in 2017. The biggest change that comes with the storm surge watch and warning is that it's the first grid-based warning for the Weather Service. And this comes with a number of communication challenges. First, the storm surge watch warning is going to be communicated a number of ways. It's the graphic, the storm surge watch warning graphic will be available on the NHC webpage, including a downloadable KML file. It's also available through the National Digital Forecast Database. It's only updated twice every hour. The approximate representation in terms of zones in the VTEC is available in the national and the WFO TCD products. And then the approximate representation using coastal breakpoints, which is what most folks are used to seeing on the wind side, is available in the NHC Public Advisory as well as the Hurricane Local Statements. And you can see the example here on the right. That's a prototype from Hermine from last year. We had a storm surge warning in effect from Arapika to Indian Pass, Florida. So how are we defining a storm surge watch and warning? Well, first, just keep in mind they are only issued for the Atlantic Basin tropical cyclones affecting the U.S. Gulf and East Coast. A storm surge watch is defined as the possibility of life-threatening inundation from rising water moving inland from the shoreline somewhere within the specified area, generally within 48 hours of the watch period, in association with a potential or ongoing tropical, subtropical, or post-tropical cyclone. Now, the warning, the difference there is the danger of life-threatening inundation from rising water moving inland from the shoreline somewhere within the specified area, generally within 36 hours, in association with the potential or ongoing tropical, subtropical, or post-tropical cyclone. And to be clear, this is only for the U.S. Gulf and East Coast. It will not be applicable at San Juan or in Puerto Rico. It's only for the contiguous United States for right now on the Atlantic Basin. And these watches and warnings may be issued earlier if other hazards might hinder evacuation, such as the arrival of tropical storm force winds. Now, again, going back to the storm surge watch warning being the first grid-based warning, that it's native to a 2.5 kilometer grid, which is a fairly large grid size. But I want you to be aware that that's the grid that you're going to be getting from the KML files or from the NDFD. The storm surge watch warning is grid-based because the area being warned is generally confined to areas bordering coasts and estuaries. Those are the places where you would expect storm surge. So we want to be as precise as we can with the areas that need to be warned. The storm surge watch warning is generated through an inter-site collaboration process between the National Hurricane Center and the weather forecast offices that are going to be affected. So it's not owned by one place or the other, it's a collaborative effort. And the dissemination methods that alert the entire zone or county for this are going to overwarn the storm surge watch warning, and we're going to get into that a little bit more here in a minute. And you can see Service Change Notice 1716 for more information on this. So the storm surge watch warning graphic, here's an example. It shows the collaborated gridded watch and warning for the storm surge hazard. It appears on the NHC website, and the thing that we would like to point you towards is the KML files that are available immediately on the NHC website and delayed on the NOAA Now Coast website by about 10 to 20 minutes, and also available in Grid 2 format from the NDFD, and that's updated twice an hour. So we did a number of prototype graphics for Hurricane Hermine and Matthew last season, but it becomes operational this year. So for the NDFD, some changes to accommodate the storm surge watch warning and also to accommodate the new hurricane threats and impacts graphics from Hawaii. First, for the storm surge watch and warning, they've been added as elements for to the hazard grids that you see in the NDFD. There's a new Grid 2 decoder this year for Grid 2 data, so that's available through the link that you see there. And there's also sample data available on this NHC website that has the 2017 examples. That's going to be a great resource. I'm going to highlight that again at the end of the presentation to get sample data for you to test with. The NDFD web graphics are updated now to include the storm surge watch and warning, and the web services are going to be updated for the storm surge watch and warning as well. And then, as I mentioned, the new hurricane threats and impacts graphics for Hawaii will be added. The other hurricane threats and impacts graphics for the rest of the Atlantic coast, those Atlantic offices, they're already on the NDFD, and Hawaii will be added on June 1st. And remember that the NDFD only updates the days 1 to 3 time periods every 30 minutes. So now to highlight what's available on the National Ocean Service's Now Coast website. The inundation graphic and the storm surge watch warning graphic are both available through the map services and the map viewer. They will be for 2017. The inundation graphic was implemented last season, and they will both have the GeoServices REST and the OCG web map services available. That'll allow viewers to overlay things like evacuation routes or critical infrastructure on top of this information. And the products, again, are available on the Now Coast site about 10 to 20 minutes after posting on the NHC website. So how does the information that you see in the inundation graphic differ from the storm surge watch warning graphic? Well, the inundation graphic, again, provides objective quantitative guidance. It's not, there is no forecaster adjusting those values that you get from the inundation graphic. It's showing where the inundation could occur. It's giving you that reasonable worst case scenario, that 10% chance of exceeding a certain threshold, like 1 feet, 3 feet, 6 feet, or 9 feet of inundation. Meanwhile, the storm surge watch warning graphic is based on objective guidance, but it's subjectively adjusted by the forecaster. It's not quantitative. It's basically a binary decision. You're either in a watch or warning or you're not in a watch or warning. But it identifies those areas that are at risk for life-threatening inundation. And the inundation graphic was created with decision makers in mind, where the storm surge watch warning graphic is intended for the general public to show where there is a risk of life-threatening inundation. Now, there are 3 NWS products that are going to give you values, inundation values in feet for that could be confused. And I want to make sure everyone understands the differences between what you're seeing in these three products. First, the NHC Public Advisory reports on the whole TC scale, on the scale for the whole tropical cyclone event. It provides the highest expected surge values within the area noted between two coastal points. So that's going to give you a range of the highest expected values there. Where the inundation graphic, as you saw, as a graphic, it can give you very point-specific values, but those values are a reasonable worst-case scenario. And that's a reasonable worst-case scenario based on historical forecast errors in the storm track size and intensity. And meanwhile, the third product, the WFO TCV product, kind of blends these two ideas. As the event draws nearer, the values in the TCV trend towards the expected values for rescue and recovery decisions, rather than the reasonable worst-case scenario, which you'll see in some of the initial TCV products that are used for evacuation decisions. So dissemination for the storm surge watch warning is going to be very complicated because we are initiating, or the grid is the warning for the storm surge watch warning. It's tied to a grid and not tied to entire counties, not tied to entire NWS zones. It's on a 2.5 kilometer grid. So we are highly encouraging our users to go to the KML files available on the NHC site rather than the VTEC and the TCV if they want to see the area that's intended to be in a watch warning that's specific to those areas bordered to estuaries and coastal areas. The geographical area associated with the storm surge watch or warning using the zones alerted by VTEC from the TCV will be larger than the actual area for the watch and warning as depicted by the grid. So the VTEC phenomena that will be used are the SS.A for the storm surge watch and SS.W for the storm surge warning. And the VTEC will continue to be used for some dissemination systems. So we still need to use that VTEC to alert EAS and to alert NWR, NOAA weather, radio, all hazards. So take a look at the storm surge watch and warning in the TCV product from the WFOs. So in 2017, the TCVs from the Atlantic WFOs, except for San Juan, can include storm surge watches and warnings as applicable. And if you're using the VTEC to display the area under storm surge watch or warning, you will alert areas that are not under a warning. So the warning is specific to the grid, not specific to the VTEC. And I know this is really confusing, but there are the dissemination systems that rely on that VTEC, and we know a lot of our users still rely on that VTEC. But we want to make it clear in your messaging that the warning is the grid. So to correctly show the warning area, partners are encouraged to use those KML files provided on the NHC website. And these files are available when the storm surge watch warning graphic is issued. So here is a truncated example where you can see a storm surge watch in a TCV from WFL. And here it's highlighted the VTEC for the SS.A code for storm surge watch. It says the headline, storm surge watch in effect. Okay, now this is probably the most complicated concept to try to get through, the way that we're alerting the storm surge watch and warning. The map on the left is a storm surge warning that was a prototype warning for Hermine. I see over the Big Bend area of Florida. The map on the right shows all possible alerting areas for any storm surge watch warning. So essentially, the area that you see in green is the area that is vulnerable to a tropical cyclone storm surge inundation from the strongest storm possible, from a Category 5 storm. It's called the maximum of maximums. So we call it the Category 5 MOM area. Now, also in that green area, the Category 5 MOM area is split into NWS zones or portions of zones that are vulnerable to tropical cyclone storm surge inundation. So, and you notice that area is a lot smaller than the red area. The red area are the entire zones that are vulnerable to tropical cyclone storm surge inundation. It's somewhere in that zone. So that means that those are the areas that if you took that Cat 5 mom area, which is the farthest inland part of the green, that it touches that red zone somewhere. There's one of those red zones somewhere in there. So for alerting, the red areas are the entire zones that are in the TCV that are alerted for a storm surge watch or warning, and that is the area that will be alerted using NOAA weather radio all hazards and for emergency alert systems, so the EAS activation. The green areas are the zones or portions of zones vulnerable to storm surge. If you had a storm surge, those green areas are going to be the areas that can be alerted via wireless emergency alerts, and on the NWS front page, the WAWA map and the point and click areas. Now, specifically for the warning that you see on the left, only those zones that would be lit up by the tropical cyclone, the VTEC, so the storm surge warning VTEC, would be activated. So the ones on the right that you see, not all of those zones would be activated for the storm surge warning you see on the left. Only the ones that correspond to the zones that are for the gridded warning. So for us, I know this is really confusing. It's very difficult to kind of wrap your head around, but only the zones that touch that pink area on the graphic on the left are the ones that are going to be alerted. They're going to have VTEC. And for the ones that have VTEC, NWR and EAS will alert for that whole zone. But for the ones that have VTEC, only the portions of those zones that are included in the Category 5 MOM area, that green area, and also correspond to the storm surge warning area, are going to get a wireless emergency alert where people are going to get a warning on their cell phone, and on the NWS front page, the WAWA map that you see, as well as the point and click pages. And we'll talk a little more about this. Okay, so this map depicts all the possible areas that can be alerted for a storm surge watch or warning. So if you're in the gray part, you will not be getting a storm surge watch or warning from the NWS unless there's some kind of bleed over from NWR into the next county. Usually that's a pretty small area, or for wireless emergency alerts into the next area there, in the next zone or county. So the red areas that you see are all the areas that can be alerted for a storm surge watch or warning using the VTEC. So that also means through EAS or NWR. The green areas are all the areas that can be alerted for a storm surge watch warning using wireless emergency alerts and on the NWS front page and the point and click. Those are the zones, the portions of zones that lie within the largest possible area for tropical cyclone storm surge flooding. That green area is the Category 5, or if you're north of North Carolina, the Category 4 maximum of maximum. That's as far as we expect storm surge to penetrate with the strongest storm that could affect that area. So there were, the FCC approved 3 new codes for the Weather Service, including the Storm Surge Watch, the Storm Surge Warning, and the Extreme Wind Warning. So beginning in 2017, the WFOs may request EAS activation for the Storm Surge Warning. They will broadcast the warnings preceded by the same and 1050 hertz tones. There is no immediate plan to tone the Storm Surge Watch. The Extreme Wind Warning is an existing operational warning for advance notice of Category 3 winds, which are 115 miles an hour or greater, associated with a major hurricane. And we did have to issue one of those for the first time last season for Matthew over Cape Canaveral. But at the time, we didn't have the FCC approval and everything in place to issue on the Extreme Wind Warning code. Next year, we will. So the EWW code will be approved, and NWS will request EAS activations for the EWW event code. And the warning will be broadcast on NWR preceded by the same and 1050 hertz tone. So now some changes for NOAA weather radio all hazards. Broadcasters in the geographic areas potentially impacted by tropical cyclones should contact their EAS equipment manufacturer if they need instructions for updating their equipment. The EAS equipment, if it's not updated, then the WFOs, when they request an EAS activation for these new codes, they will receive this unknown event code, and the AAS will not automatically activate. Existing SAME receivers and public alert TM receivers will process the new event codes. So for those receivers that have a limited caption-like messaging, they will likely show this unknown watch or unknown warning. However, the NWR SAME and public alert receivers should activate. Now, the NWR tone alert receivers should activate with the 1050 Hertz for warnings. And everyone should know that NWS headquarters is working with the manufacturers to ensure that the new codes are ready for the newly manufactured receivers moving forward. So here's an example of an extreme wind warning. This is the extreme wind warning that was issued for Hurricane Matthew. And you can see the VTEC there at the top for the EWW. And at the bottom, you see the polygon, just like for a tornado warning, for the area that's alerted to extreme wind warning. Now, for that extreme wind warning, the example that you see here says emergency alert, extreme wind warning in this area till 7:15 a.m. That was actually taken from someone's cell phone during Hurricane Matthew. These wireless emergency alerts, they broadcast the warning to your cell phone. The NWS is going to trigger WIA messages, wireless emergency alerts or WIA, using new issuances of the following tropical warnings. Anytime there's a new extreme wind warning, a new hurricane warning, not a continuation, like if you're under a hurricane warning for several hours, the first time that you get a hurricane warning issued for your area, you will receive a WIA message, and a storm surge warning as well. Now, the WIA messages are distributed through a system called the FEMA iPOS, the Integrated Public Alert and Warning System. Now, the iPOS system relies on Common Alerting Protocol messages, or CAP, and that is transmitted. The CAP messages are created by the NWS through NWS products and transmitted across the NWS dissemination systems and to FEMA iPOS for the WIA activation. Now, the thing about CAP is that it doesn't understand NWS zones. So it's designed for polygons or for FIPS codes, which are counties, and for circles. So for geo-targeting of the tropical warnings for wireless emergency alerts, hurricane warnings are geo-targeted to cell phones at the county level using those FIPS codes. Now this is really important. So if you're in a county that has multiple zones, if you're in that county somewhere there's a hurricane warning, you're going to receive that hurricane warning on your cell phone even if you're not in the warning area. So if there's a warning for coastal Miami-Dade County and you live inland in Miami-Dade County, you are going to get a hurricane warning on your cell phone even though you're not in the actual warning area. That's really important for people to know going forward. And there may be ways to alleviate this in the future, but right now that's where we're at. The extreme wind warning and the storm surge warning are geo-targeted to cell phones at the polygon level. As you saw, the extreme wind warning has the polygon in the product, so you know exactly where it's going to, where the cell towers are going to be activated for that warning. But for the storm surge warning, they're going to be alerted using those green areas that we saw in that map of the Big Bend area of Florida. They're going to be used or alerted using static NWS zone-based polygons that are bound to the farthest inland extent of the hurricane storm surge as possible. So that means they're bound to the Category 5 MOM area. And so any of the zones that are included in the VTEC from the TCV product that are one of these static zones, then they will be alerted by wireless emergency alerts. And those polygons are only available in the CAP message. They're not in the product. So you'd have to go to the CAP message to get it. And to access the CAP message, you can see there are two links here that show you first how to access CAP data and also how to some more information about CAP data. So here's kind of a truncated example of a CAP message. You can see that there's alert information there as well as the WIA, the text message that goes out to people, and also in this case, the polygon, that is GIS friendly. So it's all included in that CAP message. So how are the carriers going to geo-target WIA? Well, the NWS is making efforts to try to make these activations more targeted, but there are two kind of ways that the messages can go out. You can see that red area, the polygon that you see in the graphics. The one on the left shows that carriers generally try to broadcast the WIA message from the towers that are inside that defined warning area. But it is possible that broadcasts can happen from towers where the signal overlaps to the warning area. So you can see that can cause some significant overwarning. So just another thing for you to be aware of, get messages from people who are getting wireless emergency alerts that are not in the warning area. That can be one of the causes. So the NWS front page map, or the WAWA map, storm surge watches and warnings on the WAWA map are going to be populated using that CAP data. And again, for the storm surge watch warning, the CAP data is based on those static polygons, that green area from that other figure I showed you. The watch warning map will display the geographic coverage of the entire area in each zone that is vulnerable to storm surge when that zone is included in the TCV. It will be larger than the intended gridded warning area that you get in the KML file. And the point forecast will be based on that larger area, so it will direct some users outside of the gridded warning area to the TCV for the warning information, even though they're technically not in the warning. The storm surge warning is going to be dark purple, and the storm surge watch is going to be light pink on the WAWA map. You can note on this map that I'm showing right here, there is no storm surge watch or warning. When you click on the warning link, only the TCV is going to be seen. You're not going to get the CAP message with that polygon data. If you want that, you're going to need to go to either alerts.weather.gov or through the map legend. You can see the red box there shows you how to get to it. So there are also changes for 2017 to the national TCV from NHC, only for the Atlantic Basin. The Atlantic Basin national TCV from NHC will no longer contain breakpoints, even though the header for the product says breakpoints in it. It will no longer have breakpoints in it. It's going to only have VTEC information. So you're only going to see the VTEC for tropical storm, hurricane, and storm surge watches and warnings in the Atlantic Basin version that comes from NHC. There is a Service Change Notice 17-23 that helps explain all of this. But the one really important thing you need to know about this is because the time it takes to compile all the TCV or information, or all the tropical cyclone watch warning information from the WFOs, the national TCV that's compiled from NHC for the Atlantic is going to be delayed approximately 15 minutes relative to its previous availability, which usually was very close to the advisory time before. But now we'll need to wait for all the TCVs or all the watches and warnings to be issued by all the local offices, gather that information, and then send it out in one package that shows all the watches and warnings for the storm. So when there's special advisories, that's the most likely time that it's going to be delayed. And it could be up to 45 minutes after the advisory time, or the advisory is issued. So the important thing here is that there are no changes to the issuance times of the WFO TCVs. They're going to go out at the same times that they did last season, season before. So if you're compiling all the VTEC data, you already have a program that parses all that out. It may be easier just to keep going with that paradigm than to look for this national TCV. But if you want everything in one nice product all together, that Atlantic national TCV from NHC will be the place to get it. And one important note, the national TCV from NHC does not contain any plain language text like the WFO TCV does. It doesn't have a forecast. It is only VTEC. And here's a look at what the TCV AT will look like next year. So it'll be TCV AT 1, 2, 3, just like the public advisory, just like the advisory packages, the numbers 1 through 5. And here you can see the AWIPS ID, the name of the storm, the advisory number, the storm ID number, and all the watches and warnings, the VTEC. So the new hurricane, storm surge, and tropical storm watches. So for the Pacific, there won't be any changes to their national TCVs. The one for the Eastern Pacific that NHC issues for the California coast, it would still have tropical cyclone breakpoints in it. So it would still tell you the wind watches and warnings for between the coastal breakpoints, where the NHC, or the CPHC issued TCV product for the Central Pacific will give you island breakpoints. And here are examples on the left, see for the West Coast. You can see here we have a tropical storm warning from San Onofre State Beach to the mouth of the Tijuana River. And on the right, you see an example from the Central Pacific Hurricane Center, where they have a tropical storm warning for Oahu and other places. So if you're interested, there are some educational resources online that you could take advantage of. There's some fairly recently updated modules from Comet that you can get through this neted.ucar.edu site. Some of them are also available in Spanish, as noted here. There's a lot of new storm surge modules on there that may be helpful for you to understand the storm surge forecasting and storm surge phenomena. And also, there are some webinars that are going to be sponsored by the Southeast and Caribbean Regional Team that are planned for May and early June. And they could get information on the website you see there. And those are geared towards emergency managers and broadcast meteorologists. And now there's a website that NHC set up that has a number of examples of all the products that I mentioned today. There are lots of examples of the CAP messages, the TC graphics that are being proposed, the changes, the KML files I've discussed. So if you're looking for sample data to test with, this page is a fantastic resource. The other page that's right underneath it, the other link, that /GIS page, also has some examples on it too, if you want to practice with these files before we have a situation where we have a real storm. And with that, we're ready to take some questions. I don't know if I imagine we've been getting questions throughout the webinar. No? Okay. So because of the way the webinar works, I'm going to have to turn everyone on and off if they want to ask a question. So next to your name under attendees, you can raise your hand, I believe, and we can see if we have any questions from the folks out there in the audience. I see, I'm looking for hands raised.
Question mark. Okay, here we go.
I see, okay, here's the question pane. Here we go. So the first one is from Pat. I'm going to try to find your name so we can unmute you, Pat. Okay, Pat, you're unmuted. Pat, for storm surge watches and warnings, is there anything in the bulletin that makes reference to the associated KML file?
Correct, yeah. So when we do our software to display these things, we're looking for the VTEC bulletin to, trigger the display, but then to display the right thing, we're going to need to know what KML to pull. And I'm just not sure how you envision that being coordinated right now.
This is Dave Zielinski. It's the Hurricane Center. The KML is always going to have the same name and the same location, so it'll be static. It'll be a latest file. So at any given time, if you grab it based on seeing the reference to the storm surge in the VTEC, for instance, you can grab the file and it will have the latest information in it.
Got it. Okay, thank you. That makes sense.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Dave.
One last thing just to add. If that URL isn't on our examples page, I'll make sure it gets there.
Okay. The next question I see is from Chris Fogarty. How are the arrival timelines created in the new products? Subjective or objective? He doesn't have a microphone though, so I did unmute you, Chris, but okay. So how are the arrival timelines created in the new products?
I think that's the time of arrival.
I believe so. So James, would you like to answer that? This is James Franklin from NHC.
Yeah, Chris, it's purely objective, and they're based on historical errors of track and intensity and size, and they are essentially the same realizations that go into the wind speed probability product. So to get the what we're calling the most likely arrival timelines, that is, you look at all the realizations at a point, and you figure out what the median realization is by time. Half of them brought tropical storm force winds to that point after that time, and half of them brought tropical storm force winds to that point before, and that would determine, you know, that 50% line there. Same thing for the earliest reasonable. You're looking at at all of the realizations, the 1,000 realizations, and of all of those that brought tropical storm force winds to that point, as soon as you get to 10% of them, that marks the time for that particular location. It's purely objective, and its accuracy depends on how well the errors for that particular forecast scenario match our historical errors.
Okay, thank you, James. Okay, the next question is from Alan Rourke. I missed part of the call. Will these changes be integrated into HURAVAC? I think that's...
Alan, which changes are you asking about? There's something specific?
Yeah, Alan, you're unmuted. Or if you can type into the GUI again. Okay, we can come back to you, Alan, if you need to type in there. I understand some people don't have the audio in their computer, so that's fine. Okay, so will these slides be made available? Yes. We recorded the webinar, and the slides are going to be made available to everyone. And we sent it out back to the list that originally got the invitation for the webinar. And we're also going to have the webinar recording available as well. Okay. Looking for other questions or for hands raised. Yes.
I just wanted to clarify the earlier question about trying to pair the KML with the TCVs. They all contain the advisory number so that you're able to do that, because the KML will be available earlier than the TCVs most likely in most situations. So you'll be able to, it has that information in the KML file, and you'll be able to map that to the TCVs as they come out, because they all have the same advisory number information in them.
Thank you for clarifying that, Shanna. That's good information. Okay, I'm looking for any other questions for folks. I see. Looking for something new.
At the top.
Oh, at the top. Okay, we see. All right. Go ahead. And for Atlantic Trust TCV related to the service change notice in 17-23, will the national TCV always come after the local TCVs and be an aggregate of those local ones? Will the national TCV ever come first? And the answer is no. The national TCV is compiled from the information that is needed from the WFO TCVs. So the WFO TCVs are always going to be out first. You've got to wait for that last WFO, it's the information for the TCV to come out before NHC can compile the Atlantic TCV. So you're unmuted if you have more questions. Oh, go ahead, Shannon.
Yeah, actually, that's. I just want to make sure this is clear. So it is an aggregate of an underlying process that's going on, but the WFO TCVs and the national TCV can kind of come out all mixed up. So the The national TCV doesn't require a lot of the information that's in the WFO TCV, so it could be that some WFO TCVs come out first and then the national TCV, which is, like she showed, just VTEC and UGCs and really nothing else. And then other WFO TCVs can come after. There's really no set timeline for how that's gonna. It'll be probably advisory by advisory. Because all they require locally at NHC are the grids, the hazard grids.
Okay. Yes. Does that answer the question?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. I see a question here from Chris Herbert. Will the BAM's guidance still be issued for invest? James, I think that's a question for NHC.
I might be able to help you with the replacement part.
Good.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
So, strictly speaking, the BAM guidance won't be issued at all. The BAM shallow, medium, and deep are being retired, and they're being replaced by the TAB models, so TAB shallow, TAB medium, and TAB deep. Conceptually, they're very similar, and they were run in parallel last year. So if you look at the 2016 ADEX, you'll see both, for instance, TAB medium and BAM medium. But for 2017, you will only see TAB medium. When that's run essentially at the same time that the BAMs were always run in the past. So if NHC is running guidance on an invest, you will see the TAB models.
So would they be able to access that using the FTP site?
Yes, it will be available on the FTP site that was listed in the presentation.
Okay.
And that would be the only way to get it now, because the Chigger message will be going away, and the old BAMs were in that Chigger message.
You have to just know it from looking at their FTP.
Yeah, you're unmuted, Chris, if you wanted to. We didn't quite hear you.
Oh, I didn't know we were on mic over here. No, I didn't have any other questions.
Okay. All right. Let me see if there are any other questions here, any new ones. I don't see anything new, unless anybody has their hand raised. No. Okay. All right, everyone. I want to thank everyone very much for participating and for attending this webinar. Hopefully we answered your questions, and if not, you can see that my information is there. There's lots of information in this presentation that hopefully will be a good reference right before we have any kind of tropical cyclone event, and you can go back and refer to it. Like I said, we have recorded the webinar. We plan on posting it so that everyone will have it available if they need it. I want to thank my panelists here and elsewhere within the Weather Service who've really come together to implement all these changes for 2017. I know it's a lot. It's a lot for everyone to take in, both especially on the user end. So we want to make sure you're prepared and that you have no surprises. Okay, everyone, thank you very much for joining us today.